Hey, this is Mike Norris of Mike Norris Damascus, and you're listening to the Bladeology podcast.
All right, we're going to jump into it like we do every week. Welcome to another episode of the Bladeology podcast. We are on this week with episode 45. The turning point is here, and we've made it in one piece. This is the vocal representation of Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas,
Nick Chuprin of NCC Knives,
Elijah Isham of Isham Blade Works.
Awesome. And we are on this week with a guest. We have Brad Zinker on. Brad, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for taking time and coming on to talk knives and get into the nitty-gritty with us, man. This is going to be fun. So, without any pause in the effect, let's get into it. How did we get here? How did you get into knife making? Tell us.
Well, just always loved knives. My dad was a farmer. He always carried a pocket knife, usually a fruit knife. He was a tomato farmer, and I guess that's what got me into long and skinny, slim knife. So, just always had a knife around. He let me carry one when I was old enough. I don't remember exactly when.
Nice.
Always had them through Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts.
Oh, there you go. All right, the Scouts that's always fun.
Yeah, we learned a lot about him back then, and my Boy Scout master was a cool guy. He just fresh back from Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
And he carried a Randall knife over there, and he always had it on every camping trip here and did everything with it. So that was my first taste of a custom knife.
Damn. I mean, that's the one to have, though, right? A Randall? Jeez.
It's pretty serious to be carrying in Vietnam.
Yeah, that's no joke at all. So you were introduced to knives at a young age in a practical manner in the Scouts.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay. So and you said your dad was a fruit farmer.
Yeah, tomato farmer.
Tomatoes. Okay. So you must have there must be some farming in the background there.
Yeah, my grandfather farmed for the same company my dad worked for, and unfortunately they went out of business before I was old enough to get into it. Otherwise, I'd probably be a farmer too.
There you go. See? And where in the world was that exactly?
Homestead, Florida.
Oh, shoot.
All the way at the south end.
Okay. All right. So you're still in Florida now.
I am. 2 years ago, I moved to North Florida, to Tallahassee, get up here close to the kids and grandkids. Retired from my job I had, 32 years of selling industrial hardware for a little family-owned business there in Homestead, and moved from 500 miles from one end of the state to the other.
Oh, geez. Industrial. Okay, tell us a little bit about that. Industrial hardware.
It was the company I went to work for was a friend of mine owned it, and his dad started it after World War II, I think 1947. And it eventually changed from a mom and pop type hardware store into, especially when they started building the nuclear power plant down there near Homestead, that's when it changed into an industrial supply house, kind of. And I was the outside salesman for them for 32 years, and probably the best job of the company. Got to go around and visit customers and see what they needed and sell a few knives on the side.
There you go. So now, when you say industrial hardware, I'm thinking bolts. I'm thinking like the aisle at Tractor Supply. What am I close?
Yeah, close. It's big bolts, chain, Rust-Oleum paint, stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Right. So industrial solutions. I gotcha.
Yes, sir.
And now you're saying you were doing that and selling knives on the side. So how did we get from the scouts to making? How was that evolution?
Well, collected knives. The company I wound up working for all that long, they were case knife dealers, and I'd go in there before I went to work for them forever and would buy a knife every now and then. And my boss I wound up working for, his father, when he was still there and working, he would give all the good customers a case knife every Christmas for a penny. And, you'd walk in the door and he'd say, "Have you got a penny on you?" And you'd pull one out and he'd hand you a nice little 1, 2, or 3 bladed case pocket knife. Got a box full of them in the safe.
There you go.
So, yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on something real quick before we move forward. The penny for the knife thing I'm pretty familiar with, but just to clarify, so there's a little bit of superstition involved in that, and I'm sure that you must know why.
I have a little experience with that myself.
Yeah, it was explained to me that you don't want to cut ties with somebody, and I was never a believer in that. I've given away a bunch of knives in my life, but and haven't cut any ties that I know of.
There you go.
But he was a stickler about it. If you didn't have a penny, you had to go out in the truck and get one and bring it in.
You got to find a penny. I mean, come on, a penny is right. It's in the cup holder. It's under the seat. Everybody's got one somewhere.
It's on the
probably.
ground,
Floorboard is everywhere.
Yeah, there you go. See, okay, so it started with case knives, which is an excellent place to start. I mean, those are the classic American trapper, right? The pick bone.
Oh yeah,
those are. I still have a total soft spot for those.
Well, that was a knife I started carrying when I was carrying knives, was the case trapper, 2-bladed trapper. And then when they came out with the slimline single blade, I fell in love with that one. Carried that one for years and years. Went off to college in the early 70s and met a guy that worked at a local gun store here in Tallahassee that was a knife maker named Jack Belk. And he's the first guy I actually met that I could actually see stuff that he made. And when I graduated in 76, I decided I was going to spring the money and buy myself a graduation gift of a custom knife. Well, of course, he had none available. And I told a friend of mine about it, and somehow he finagled one out of this guy, and I paid $75 for this little 3-inch stag handle skinning knife and just fell in love with it. Sit
Full
there
custom?
And pull it. Oh yeah, full custom. I'd sit there and pull it out and look at it, and every time I went hunting or fishing, it was on my side, and just got me hooked right there. I said, I need to make something like this.
That stag handle on just the right fixed blade, there's something about it. Like it's even if you're not a huge fan of stag, I feel like most people, there's like a very primitive connection between seeing stag on a knife that just seems right. Like it seems like the ultimate way that a tool should be dressed.
I agree. It's probably my favorite handle material is stag. Every one you do is different. I don't, even out of the same horn, I bought whole horns from sandbar stag deer, and when you cut them up, one side to the other looks different.
The way you do it's kind of modern meets, old school with your, what is it, the silverfish model?
No, the Urban Trapper.
One of them. I remember you did stag on it, and it looks good. It's just the way you do it. It's
Yeah.
like modern meets old school.
Yeah, well, that's what I like. I always like that trapper blade pattern, and when I started making custom folding knives, that was one of the first styles I made.
There you go. So you got a fixed blade, and it was stag handled, and it was on your side the whole time, and that was your first custom knife purchase, which is pretty awesome. Solid purchase. Yep. What was the next step from there?
Oh, went back to Homestead, went to work with my dad. He had quit farming at that time. Company he was working for went out of business, and he hooked up with a friend of his that had a fire extinguisher company, and he bought half into that. And that happened actually while I was going away to college or right before, and I'd come home on break or in the summer and work with him and learn how to do fire extinguishers and fire systems. And one of my clients was a machine shop, and there was a older machinist there. I wish I could remember his name. I can see his face right now, but I can't remember his name. And we would always talk knives. And one day I went by to see him, and he handed me a chunk of D2 and 2 slabs of micarta, and said, here's the makings of a knife. Go knock yourself out. And that was probably around 1982 or so when that happened.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't have any equipment. All I had was a bench grinder, a 6-inch bench grinder, and I tried grinding on it with that, and boy, it was just chattering all over the place. And I think I saved up some money and went and bought a 1x42 Dayton little belt sander with a 9-inch disc on the side, and I made that first knife of mine off of that machine. It took me a year and a half off and on working on that thing, and when I got done, I had a knife, and looked like a knife. It would cut, but it sure wasn't very pretty.
A crude instrument.
Yeah. I still have it. I kept it. I have to pull it out of the safe every now and then to remind me where I came from. After that really got me hooked on making knives, and I met a guy locally that was a local gunsmith. He'd made a few knives. He had a Bader grinder, and he let me use his grinder to grind a few knives, and that told me I needed to have a grinder. And back then, Bader or Square Wheel were the only grinders that were around that I knew of. I think Burr King was there, but nobody could afford them. That was the holy grail. So I made I think 4 or 5 knives using his equipment, and my buddies started buying them, and I had another real good friend that loaned me money to buy my first grinder, buy my Bader, and he took it out in knives.
Oh, nice. Okay. That's pretty good payback. He buys you the tool to make the tools.
Yeah. And he's probably my single best customer to this day. I mean,
wow.
So he just always gets knives from me, and he gifts 99% of them. So
Wow.
good customer to have.
Yeah, that's awesome that that connection has seen many moons. That's very cool. Yeah, I mean it's weird or it's not weird at all, but it's a good reference to bring up that, right, there were at a time you didn't just open up a catalog and choose which grinder you wanted. There was just only a few choices. Like that was it. Those were the A or B.
Yeah, and supplies were an issue back then too. I mean, unless you knew a little bit about it, I wouldn't have known to get D2 for a steel to try, and wouldn't know that micarta would make a good handle. And without some help from somebody that's done it before, because there was none of these, no internet, not all these knife suppliers that are everywhere nowadays.
Yeah, now it's like literally it's like the information superhighway when it comes to knife making.
There's too much out there to even choose nowadays.
Right. Yeah. Now you have to,
really?
Pretty much to choose who you want to. Yeah. Exactly.
Were you going to any shows back then, or no? Like any small trade shows at all?
Not then. I mean, I was into guns then too, and some buddies.
There was always a crossover. Yeah.
Would go to gun shows, and we'd go and buy and sell and pick up a knife here and there, but no strictly knife shows. I think the first strict knife show I did. They had a little one in Miami, probably in the late '90s, and I can see it. Probably about 30 or 40 tables, and met some people there. I think Brian Ty was there, and a guy named Jack Davenport out of Florida. He was a pretty serious folder maker, and I learned quite a bit from him at the beginning, on how to lay out a folder. So that was my first memory of a show I actually went to and had a table at.
Around when was this?
Probably 95, 96, somewhere around there, mid to late 90s.
The golden age of Florida knife making with springs attached to the interior portion. Because you're right. Homestead, that's like, it's the spot.
Yeah, we're just outside of Miami, 30, 40-minute ride, you could be in Miami. And during that time, the Knife Makers Guild had all their shows in Orlando. So I started going up there, and I went up there a couple of years about that time, and, they were having 300 table shows up there. And I mean, you walk into that and my eyes were just big the whole weekend, seeing all the famous knife makers and all the different kinds of knives. And I think I decided at that time I wanted to join the Knife Makers Guild. So I went through carried my knives up there and got some guys to sign off on them. And of course there was a waiting list then. And the first show I got to go display at was in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
So that was probably in '98, I believe, was that first show.
Oh, so you've been going to Las Vegas for a while.
Well, I did that first show there, and then I didn't go back until they started having the gathering.
Oh, okay. All right.
So they had like 2 shows in Vegas, the guild did, and I got the second one. And then we were at 2 years in New Orleans and somewhere else, and then it moved back to Orlando, and we were there for quite a while till it started moving again. So, I mean, it made me get out in the world and travel. I'd never been around the places like Las Vegas and all that until I started making knives. So.
That's a good reason to get out and do some traveling. I've always liked the idea of a show that moves, I mean, I usually move with the shows, but it would be cool to have a show that like constantly was in a different place. I feel like it exposes customers and makers to different people, different parts of the country.
It is, but it's also on the other side, the people that put on the shows, it's a big nightmare, getting the venue and making all the deals for that to happen.
I suppose that's true. Yeah.
And nowadays there's too many shows.
Right.
I mean, until the virus hit, there were too many shows.
Yeah.
And then none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way too many to none.
Yeah.
So okay, so you went to Vegas, and tell us about that first Vegas show. How was it back then?
Well, I didn't know what to gauge it on other than the Orlando Guild shows, and it was, real glitzy like Vegas is and was, especially in those days. And one of the first guys I met there waiting to go into the guild room was Les Adams, who you just had on a couple of times ago. And the funny thing is we're both from the same county in Florida. He lived in the north end, I lived in the south end, and we met out in Las Vegas.
That's awesome.
And
wow.
We've been friends ever since.
Oh man.
So
that's a pretty chance encounter to travel all the way to Las Vegas and to meet somebody and be like, hey, where are you from? Like, no kidding. Like, I'm from the same place.
I know.
That kind of happened to me at Blade Show when I met the dude from the belt company that's like 10 miles up the road.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're like, wait, hold on. That's my neck of the woods. I'm from there. Like, I'm also from there.
It happens.
It
happens all the
does.
time.
The world continues to get smaller. So 90s glitzy Vegas, and then you run into Les Adams. Oh boy. You weren't sharing a table, right?
No, not at all. In fact, I think it was his second show, and it was my first one, so we kind of I really didn't know where to go or what to do, and he kind of pointed out, okay, go over here and see this guy and do this and do that, and kind of straightened me out in the ways of the world that back then.
That's good. Guy on the inside. That's what everybody needs.
Oh yeah, always helps.
So at this point, were you making folders, or you were still messing around with fixed blades?
No, strictly fixed blades back then. And the first couple of shows I went to, guild shows, and we had a little Florida show that started about the same time, Florida Knife Makers Association, a little one-day show they'd have in Orlando. It started there for the first couple of years, and I'd go to these shows with 15 or 20 fixed blades, and the thing I remember about going to Vegas the first time, I was nervous about traveling with them, so I shipped them out there. Well, of course, you got to pay for the shipping, you got to pay for the insurance, you worry about them the whole way out there. And then you go out there and you only sell one or two, so you got to insure them and ship them all the way back. You got all that expense. You worry about them getting back home. And there were guys around me that would walk in there with a little satchel, and they'd have 10 or 12 folding knives in this little thing they carried under their arm, and they'd lay it out on the table. I said, man, one of these days I want to be him.
Just practical.
Yeah, I want to get to that point where I don't have to, carry a box or two of fixed blades with sheaths and all that stuff. And so that's what got me into making folders. And something I always wanted to do. I started off reblading some broken ones people would give me. Just learning that.
So how did we make that transition from a straight knife to the folder? How did that go? Was it another maker, or you just dove in?
I kind of dove in at that time, and I was, my first folder I made from scratch was a lockback, which, I was carrying a buck 110 at that time as a folding knife, and carried that one all the way from college time. And in fact, going back to my college days, one of my friends in college, his dad had a set of stamps, and I can see him. He said, "Let me see your knife," and I pulled that buck 110 out, and he laid it up on an anvil and stamped my initials into the brass bolsters on that.
Oh, cool.
And I said, well, that's pretty cool. I'm looking at my initials in a knife here. I said, well, that might have ignited a little fire right there.
That's actually really neat. But I mean, the buck 110 is obviously right. It doesn't get much more American folding knife than a buck 110. Or just knives at all. Like, that's the knife.
So, to get back on the making folders, I just jumped into it then and started made a few lockbacks, made a few slip joints. Then I discovered titanium and made some liner locks. First liner lock I made had a aluminum frame in it, and boy, it made a knife, but it wasn't very stout, and it just, I said, I got to do something different, and started buying some titanium and learning how to work that stuff, burning up God knows how many drill bits and saw blades and everything till you learn to embrace carbide. Work with that titanium and got me hooked on that, and that's what I like to work with now is titanium. And one of the first Blade shows, I think I started going to Blade around 2002, I think was my first Blade show. And I was in the back of the room talking to Chuck Bybee, because I'd been buying a few supplies from him at Alpha Knife Supply. And he was opening a box back there, and he pulled out this knife out of his pocket, and he flipped this thing open with a flipper mechanism. And I go, well, and then when the blade jumped out, I couldn't believe how big the blade was in relation to the handle. And I said, let me see that thing. And it was a Matt Diskin custom.
Oh, boy.
And
It's an automatic.
no, it wasn't an automatic. It was just a straight flipper. But I was just amazed at how much blade came out of that handle and how easy it was to open. And that was my first look at a flipper of any kind. So started talking to Chuck about it, and he told me to go buy a junkyard dog. And I think Tim Gallion designed that one. And I ordered one and took it apart and saw what made it tick. And that's pretty much what I've been making ever since then is flippers. 'Cause that's what got me really hooked on that style of knife.
So I take it you were probably using washers before, then switched to bearings pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I tried. I made a few flippers with washers, but I just could not get them to consistently work. And so when I discovered bearings, that changed everything.
Smooth and easy. Getting it done. Rocking and
Oh
rolling.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, washer's a little trickier to get working because if your tolerances are even out here, things start to bind up. You have to have precision ground titanium, precision ground steel to get that to work right. Bearings, it's a lot easier to
Unless
get.
your name's
Nice
Jerry
and smooth.
McGinnis.
Sure it is. Sure it
Same thing.
is.
Precision ground everything at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry doesn't just
Man.
slap shit together.
And that's pretty much the way I started making folders, was slapping shit together. It was, I mean, I'm a self-taught in almost every kind of machine work that you can imagine. I've never had any schooling at all in any of that. I've learned by trial and error, basically. And mostly error. I learn a lot from making mistakes.
That's where all the learning is all the errors. That's perfect.
Yep.
So, because you were talking about carbide drill bits. So I mean, we're talking about a manual mill then.
Yeah. I just got a little benchtop mill drill is what I started with when I found a deal on one. There was a MSC in Miami that was closing up and selling their stuff off cheap, so I bought this mill drill, and that made life a lot easier.
When is it you started drilling holes in the frames? Because I know you like to do that a lot. That's kind of your signature at this point.
Yeah, I think I didn't come up with that idea. I know Tom Mayo had been doing it before me. I think I saw some of his stuff, but
You do it your own way, though. Like, you can definitely tell when it's a Zinker design.
yeah, I just try to put more holes in it, and
Yeah.
I mean, take a nice light material like titanium and make it even lighter. And I did that early on. I mean, there's probably more of my stuff out there with holes in it than without holes. I mean, I just did a custom for a guy who didn't want holes in it, and it almost hurt to do that way, but because I think they look cool with the holes in them. And
They absolutely do. Nick actually has a story that involves one of your knives. He just went out and got one.
I didn't just
yeah?
go out. I've had like
Oh,
six.
that's
Of his,
right, yeah.
I've had like 6 of his customs in the past.
Yeah, but there was one particular one recently.
Oh yeah, I picked up one of the Boker carbon fiber urban trappers and completely redid it.
yeah,
Got one of those with the hand rub blade and the marble carbon fiber. I smoothed out the carbon fiber a little bit. Orange peeled the handles and bronzed them. I carry it all the time, but no, I've had about 6 or 7 of his customs when I used to collect knives. I was a big fan of them for carry. Very light, very thin. I've been wanting to design something like that for... I've been making knives for 9 years. I've been wanting to design something like that for about 8 of those. Never got around to it, but I've always wanted to design something that's totally like slim and user like carry. At some point I'll get there, but it's been something in the back of my mind forever. Just very minimalistic, thin, slim, and super thin blade stock. The closest thing I did was my recent imp, which is 110 for the blade, 1/8 inch scales, but that's only a 2-inch blade. So I was thinking about keeping the same width of that knife, and then just bringing it out to 3 inches, and then using the same stock thicknesses on there.
Yeah, that's a nice size. I mean, that's a heavy knife for me with a 1/8 inch scales, and I usually match up an 1/8 inch blade with 1/8 inch scales. But that's on the big side for me. My happy place is 3/32 blade and 3/32 liners. But I am doing quite a few with 16th inch liners and 16th inch blades too.
Super lightweight.
I tell people you can carry more than one that way.
Yeah, you can carry 2.
Or 3.
Yeah, the first one I made at that imp, I made it with thin air, like one. I think it was like 0.1 tie. I liked it. The only problem was I couldn't hide the hardware as much. I couldn't hide the stop pin in there, and couldn't build it in the way I usually build my knives. But I wanted to make it thinner for the future.
Keep it slim, Nick. Keep it slim. So drilling holes in the handle and through the carbon and the tie and always, I mean, holding to a. I want to make a cycling reference, Drillium, where they used to drill the cranks to lighten it. So I mean, like an aesthetic, but also purposeful. So I mean, to lighten the knife and to make it look cool.
Same thing like on a racing watch band.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, make it lightweight. But no, yeah. Speed holes.
Speed holes. Yes.
Speed holes. There you go.
See? There we go.
I like it.
So in the development of the flipper and the holes, somehow miraculously you got so we jumped into that. But so collaborations, is that going too far ahead?
Not really. No,
Okay.
I mean, I started. I mean, collaborations are fairly recent for me as far as my designs for Boker, and that started in 2013 when I got introduced to the guys from Boker, Mark and Karsten. And Larry Brahms from Blade Art introduced me to them, and at Blade Show, in fact.
At the point where someone's introducing you to the Boker gentleman, you must have had a pretty distinct, recognizable style. I mean, just because it has to be an aesthetic and a knife that's sort of somewhat established for Boker. They're not just going to pick up any old design, right? So you've been doing that for a while, and it was a sort of a signature of yours.
It actually started with Boker with a what they call the Pelican. That's what got me introduced to him. I call it my mini Tanto money clip. It's just a little tiny, maybe 1.75-inch blade, 16th inch thick, 16th inch frame with some holes in it and a clip, and makes a nice little money clip, a little Tanto blade. But for some reason, they had some issues in getting that blade ground correctly. And at the same show that I was introduced to them, they came to my table, and Mark wound up buying one of my custom trappers at the time with the holes in it. And they decided to bring that one on, and that's what turned into the Urban Trapper. And that one actually came out before the Pelican did, which is what got me introduced to Boker. And apparently it's been doing pretty good because they've come out with many variations of it. Scales, no scales, different sizes of it. We just had another one. I made what I call a linear version, which is a straighter version, no curves to it. And that one just came out here a couple of months ago in their catalog.
Wow. So I mean, that's got some serious staying power.
Yeah.
It's a slim. It's bare bones essentially. That's why I got the Urban Trapper. But what I really wanted was the mini Urban Trapper. It's just that one came up for sale on Arizona's website, so I bought that one and refinished it.
Yeah, the mini, what I call the mini, they call it the petite, is, probably a 15% scale down from the original sized one.
Yeah, it's about a 3-inch blade on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So so we're looking at, where are we? So we're looking at 2013, 2014, rocking out some initial Boker collaborations, which is, I mean, I consider that exciting. I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it took about a year for that first knife to come out after they said, okay, we're going to do it. Things don't happen quick in that part of the industry.
Right. Things don't happen quick in any part of this industry, but maybe that's just me.
No. It takes a little while.
Yeah.
Blink and you will miss it.
Knife industry has its own calendar and timeline it works on.
Yeah.
We call that knife maker time.
Right. So you met these Boker guys at Blade Show through Knife Art. So you were already, you must have been
Blade art.
Blade art. Sorry, Blade art. Okay. So you must have already, you were using dealers at that point.
Yeah, Arizona's been with me since back in the Orlando Guild days, and Julie bought a few knives from me there, and Andrew's my go-to guy now. He's the one I deal with most of the time, him and Henry, and they like my stuff, and I like it that they like my stuff.
It works out sometimes like that. It's a mutual. Yep.
Oh yeah. And I do quite a bit with Knife Center and Blade HQ too, and GP Knives. I've got a pretty good dealer network set up right now.
Nice. So then you've basically so where we are in 2013. So this whole time you were, at what point were you full time? Is what I'm getting at. So I mean, are you full time this whole time, or you were saying you were doing industrial?
I was working full time. I was SpareTime knife making until 2 years ago, December. I retired from that 32-year full-time job I had in 2 years ago, December, and this coming December, and I guess I could say I've been full-time since I retired and moved to Tallahassee. But the rest of it's been not part-time, but spare time, like every spare minute, basically.
Right. So you were smart and didn't quit your day job. I like it. That's
no. Couldn't afford to.
Right.
See, he did the smart thing, and I did the smarter thing. I never had a day job. I just made knives.
Most people do it in the opposite direction.
Right.
Is that most people, starts out maybe as a hobby and then goes to something more and then quit my job, be a knife maker.
Brad is laughing because he has health insurance and a 401k. Nick is working full time and bleeding.
I have
and
health
his body
insurance.
hurts.
Bleeding.
It's like,
And I'm working on the 401k part.
yeah.
I'm envious of you young guys, though. I mean, I wish I'd have started earlier. There's no telling when I might have quit to go full time if I could have started earlier, or had some kind of background from working as a machinist or working for, like Boeing or companies like that. Some of these guys come out and just blow you away with the stuff they make.
Yeah. Well, now this is a good point for me to stubbornly bring this up once in a while. So I would consider you a first generation knife maker. So knife making was not, it was something you had a job and then knife making, whereas and not at all in a negative way to anybody, but I would consider like Nick, for instance, would be a second generation knife maker. So he got into knife making because of knife making. And I feel like the Boeing reference is interesting. Somebody like, RJ Martin or something like that. That's a real world job that eventually turned into knife making. But but I would definitely consider you first generation. Somebody who kept a job and also did knife making. Before there was just like, I'll just Google up how to make a knife. Like, you didn't do that. Like, that's good indicative of a first generation knife maker.
That's probably because there was no such Google back then.
Yeah, that helps. Yep. Like, what is Google? What's up, Nick? I know you're waiting. What's going on?
No, I was like, I'd say there's about like 4 generations, and I consider myself a 3rd gen. Because second gen will be the guys after that Switchblade crash, and where the tactical knife market kind of started, and he's definitely still first gen because he was starting in the 80s. But then I started when forums were still a thing, and there wasn't really much info out online. You just have to become friends with a knife maker. Hopefully, they shared some of the secrets / the 200 scrap blades I had in my basement before I even finished one.
This is a before
And this is all in
Instagram.
terms of
Yeah,
modern
like,
knife makers.
That I'll consider 3rd gen. Like now, 4th is like
Okay, fair.
now it's like Instagram and like
Instagram knife makers.
there's
knife
tons of YouTube videos to follow and all sorts of things out there.
All right, so second gen, maybe who's second gen then? Second gen are the guys.
Second gen is predates me. That's like went to tactical knife markets like the 2000s.
So
where
like
it was
beefy
just
knives?
no. That's my generation, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Before like just forums and shows, and there wasn't much. It was still tight knit community. It wasn't very public. It was mainly still magazines. It was just transitioning to forums. I was like right before I started, but there wasn't much info out there either. When I started, there was almost no info online. There was a little bit in the forums if you caught it, but even then, you had to really privately message somebody, and hopefully they'd answer your question. But they're pretty good with their knowledge. Nowadays, you follow a knife maker for like 3 weeks on Instagram. If he posts enough, you'll figure out how to make a knife because the progress is always out there.
Just got to message somebody on Instagram. Some drunken sailor in Texas will probably answer you, most likely.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, man.
Hey, man.
That's exactly what happened.
I tell you why your stop pin placement is all wrong.
So now, Brad, you're good friends with Les over all this time. Where are all the switchblades, man?
I've been asked to make some. I just haven't. If I'm going to make one, I want it to be double action.
All right.
And I just haven't. I'm having too much fun making the stuff I'm making to devote any time to that right now. I know you're a switchblade guy, and there's a lot of them out there. And but I'm just enjoying what I'm doing right now, and still learning to perfect the way I'm making them.
Oh man, all right. That's that's a mighty humble statement on your part to be making knives this long and still recognize the search for perfection.
Well, I learned something with every knife I make. I mean, if I ever make a perfect one, I'd have to quit.
Oh, don't do it, man. Don't do it. Okay. Be like, Brad made a perfect knife. What happened? Like, he retired. It's over. There's no more. There's no more knives, man.
No, I find flaws in everything I make, and even I bought a little CNC mill about 6-7 years ago, and just started. I'm a 2D guy there. All I'm doing is cutting profile out on there, cutting blades and frames out, and I mean, I can have a half a dozen of them on my bench, and every one's got a personality when you go to put them together.
Hey, I'm using the 3D. I'm doing full 3D and fixtures, and I got almost damn near finished knives in my CNC, and they still all require unique tuning, and they all, good way to say it, personality.
I mean, you really got to admire the factories, the way they're coming along now, putting these out between Boker and Wee and everybody else that's doing stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing they can make what they make at the price point they sell it at.
Yeah, I can't figure that one out. Titanium is a fickle mistress.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
just about who you know. It's like there's like a stash of it somewhere we're not being told about.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Okay.
Yeah, me and Jeremiah are both like, wait, what? Titanium is everywhere.
Well, somebody's getting good prices.
I think it's.
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not titanium warping and not ever wanting to do what you wanted to do. I was taught by machinists
that's
one
just
day.
the magic of it.
Look at everything. Look at everything as if it's rubber. Everything flexes.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent. I mean, that's true.
You talking about titanium warping? I bought a laser about 3 or 4 months ago, and I'm learning to play with it now. So I wanted to laser the inside, something to kind of mimic jewelling on the inside of some of my liner locks. Well, you put too much power to it, 40,000 thick or 50,000 thick tie, it's going to warp on you. So,
it's a lot of heat.
Yep.
One way I figured out how to solve that is go ahead and flip it over and laser the other side, and that brought it right back to square again.
Well, the same thing when you sandblast those thin frames. If
Oh.
you sandblast just one side, they warp, and then you got to sandblast the other side.
That's right. Yeah, I've had them curl into a C before with too much pressure in my bead blast cabinet.
Yeah, that was a hard one I had to learn a long time ago, making my first liner lock. I wanted to sandblast just one side, so the insides look clean, and I didn't sandblast the part that touches the liner. I screwed that thing together, and I could put a goddamn toothpick through one side.
Oh yeah.
So they definitely don't look right.
That's for holding toothpicks, man.
Yeah, they sandblast the other side, and it's like, oh, okay, it's flat again. What a sorcery is this? And that's the call every knife maker I knew, and they're all like, yeah, it's just like that sometimes. And I'm like, oh, that's a great answer, I guess.
It's just broken, man. That's just it.
Yeah, just be like that.
Nick, have you ever gotten a good deal on titanium and found out it was CP instead of 6AL4V and wouldn't make a spring?
No, I've always just used the same guy, and I buy it by the sheet. So I've never done that mistake. I know if someone who bought a lot of bar stock to make something with it, not realizing the bar stock was CP.
Well, I learned that the hard way. So
yeah, I know CP is great too. It's pure. It's too pure. It doesn't have spring retentions to it. I did have a batch that was sent to me mislabeled, but they changed the sheet out for me.
before they caught it before it was an issue.
I was just carrying it to the water jetter, and I set it down, and I was messing with it, and I started out there's a bow to it, and I touched it, and I straightened out the bow, and I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. And so I just started pushing on it, and it just kept bending like copper almost. It was ridiculously soft. I was like, no, this is definitely not the right stuff.
That's not right. So, Brad, we ran into you at the most current, which would be last year's Las Vegas Custom or Las Vegas Classic, and you had a nice spread of knives, different models and different dress. And I wanted to go over that. So I know that the Urban Trapper is sort of that is a very popular model, but so this whole time you're a part-time knife maker and you're still making customs even though the Boker collaboration has taken off. Tell us a little bit about the different models that you build in custom form.
I like warnies too, so I make a lot of different kinds of warnies and different lengths, different thicknesses. Just I do a lot of modifications. I'll get a knife I like, and then I'll stretch it out a little bit, or I'll shorten it up, or I'll make it a little taller, a little wider, and just keep doing that until I get a happy spot there. I deal with a lot of hunters, so I need to have some skinning type folders, and that's where the FR series with Boker came out. And it's just pretty much a straight drop point. That was really my version of a Loveless drop point skinner I turned into a folder years ago. So that was what I was going for. It didn't turn out that way exactly, but that was the aim at the time.
It's an undeniable influence on everything. Loveless, just, man, that's just it. It's somehow his designs just touched everybody differently, and it's got staying power.
Oh yeah.
You do a compound ground warnie, which looks I think looks pretty far out. I'm spacing out the model at the moment, but I like the way that one looks. It's something else. Seeing a compound ground like that is nice. I dig it.
I started compound grinding those because if you don't, the point gets so fine it scares me. I mean, you drop that thing on the bench and you're liable to break the tip off on it. And it just kind of beefs the tip up a little. Plus, I think it looks cool too, especially when you look down the back of the blade. You know, it's got some curves there, got something going on.
It looks like the whole blade is kind of flexing, like it's like in the mirror, and it's like flexing a bicep. Like the whole front is just it's just kind of like it's all slim and slicey where it needs to be, and then the back is like this big beefy. I mean, for your blade thickness, it's big and beefy. So I always like it whenever I see it or see pictures of it, and you're looking down the barrel, it's like, oh man, like that blade's got some business going on. I dig it.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Let's put a spring in that and make it an auto. All right, moving on.
Every episode he sneaks in. Hey, what you do is great, but like,
just
spring in there.
Just
Come on, guy.
Yeah. So put maybe. No, but it is far out. So that whole time you were living two lives. You were part-time for so long. Like, that's crazy. Congratulations.
Spare time.
Right. Spare time. Just every spare minute devoting it to knife making. And a huge amount of models, which kind of brings us sort of full circle to your pursuit of perfection, right? So I see a lot of work from you, and like you were saying, you're stretching, you're thinning. I mean, it's like, I appreciate that you have an aesthetic, practical theme that you're constantly playing of, and you're not afraid to just sort of just do something else, you know, and make it more what you want it to. So a lot of makers sort of have this box that they work inside of, and they're like, this is what I do, these are the knives that I make. But a lot of what we see, like when we saw you in Las Vegas, your whole table is just like, whatever the knife it is that you need, I have the solution for you, like size, like width, whatever. You know, which I feel like is a nod to like a classic sort of knife making era, where it's like, you know, custom orders of like whatever the job is, I have the proper knife for. And that being said, did this whole time, were you taking custom orders, or you're not really a custom order kind of guy?
I'll take custom orders if it's something I want to make. I'm much happier making what I want to make and then offering it for sale. I think I do a better job on the knife if I make it for me. You know, if you order a knife from me, you've got a preconceived notion of what it's going to turn out to be, and I may not be thinking the same way you are, and then you're going to be disappointed. And if you're disappointed, I'm disappointed. And, you know, I'm a lot happier just making what I want to make and laying them out there and let people pick them up and handle them and say, yeah, this is what I want.
When you see a finished knife with no prior expectations, you can't be disappointed. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That is absolutely the most concise answer to that question yet, ever.
It's like, bam, it's on the table.
Yeah.
Like, there we go. Like, I want this.
Mm-hmm.
Blade steels, you started somewhere. You started with D2. Where did you go from there? Do you have a favorite now that you work with?
My favorite now is CPM 154, CM, the good stuff. And it's just, you know, I haven't found anything better. I've tried all the new steels out there and haven't found anything I like better. For years before this came along, I used ATS 34 because that was what I could get in the thin sheets that I needed. And but then, you know, I'm glad that CPM is made here in the U.S. You know, ATS was Japanese, which I had no problem with, but I like to, you know, buy American where I can.
Not unreasonable at all to, you know, keep the industry powered by the labor dollars that we all spend on it. Yeah. So how did you get in contact with the Gathering? I'm interested in that.
Well, Larry, who's the one that introduced me to Boker, he's the one that kind of heads up the Gathering too. And he was based in Miami, and he used to come to the guild shows in Orlando is where I met him. And he bought a few knives from me. And one of the only regrets I have as far as shows go is I missed the very first Gathering. And I don't know why, but I didn't go to it. But I went to the second one, and I haven't missed one since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I told Larry, wherever he has it, I'll go there. So I mean, that's probably the most fun show I do. I mean, just the way it's laid out, so different than any other show.
You know, it is the 4-pointed tables and the environment. I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased. I haven't been to as many gatherings as you have, but the gatherings I've been to have been quite eventful. It's definitely Las Vegas has a feel to it, and where the Gathering is in Planet Hollywood, there it really it's fun. And I think that the people, and now granted, like I said, I haven't been to that as many as you have, but the people that go to that show, I think everybody's on the same page. And I think that obviously we've talked about this. People that go to Blade Show are not like, there's so many different pages from different books, but the guys who go to the Gathering we're all there for one thing, and that's to have fun, but to also talk about knives and buy knives. But definitely, like, the show experience with the Gathering is so great because it's such a social event as well.
Yes, exactly.
It's like a graduation beyond Blade Show. It's like the next level.
Yeah, like if you go to Blade Show and you think that's cool and you're really into it, like, you should check. Hey bro, you should check out the Gathering. Like, you know, like the Gathering is, you know, it's great. The 4-pointed table thing and the way it's set up is always, I'm always a fan of that. And the very social nature to the thing. So you were at the second Gathering ever. Be honest, how was your show etiquette by your second show?
What do you mean by etiquette? How I acted, or
how everybody acted?
It was so different than any other show I'd done up to that point. And, you know, I started going to Blade like in 2002. I think I missed 1 year, but I've been there every other one since then. And Blade is Blade. I mean, it's really a must-go-to show for me, because for at least you got to buy supplies there, you know. That's the best place to lay your hand on stuff. But as far as the atmosphere of the Gathering, it was so much fun and so different, and met some new guys. I mean, there's some guys that only do like the Gathering and maybe one other show, just like there's guys that only do the Blade Show every year. So that's a big part of the show experience for me, is going and meeting other knife makers and, you know, getting new friends that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we obviously, you know, we agree with you. Going to knife shows is, lately it's the knives are number 2 to the socializing. Obviously, it's 1 and 2 are very close, but I think once the community sort of envelops itself, it's definitely it's a great social experience to hang out with other people who are like-minded.
For sure. I mean, that's the most fun I have, is going out to dinner with other knife makers and trading tips and learning things from each other, and just made a bunch of good friends doing this.
Yeah, we'll have shows again one day.
June.
Yeah, June.
One
June.
day
I'm
in,
hoping.
Maybe.
2024.
Nah, I think 2021 Blade Show will be a thing to tell your kids about. Well, okay, for those of us that don't have kids and are going to have them, or maybe not, that'll be the thing that we tell
your
them
pets about.
Tell your pets about. Tell your hamster, the goldfish, whatever. Yeah. So Brad,
I don't want to rub it into you guys here, but I did go to California 2 weeks ago for that California Custom
I was
Show.
really okay.
How was that?
Yeah,
It was
nothing.
it
We've
was
only seen
small. It was only about 40 tables. There
things
were
outside, right?
there were like 5 of us there from Florida, which kind of tells you, we're needing to have a show somewhere. I mean, had a good experience. It was kind of cool. They had it outside in the parking lot under tents, and luckily it had cooled off because apparently it had been 100 plus degrees there for who knows how many days in a row until the weekend of the show. But it wound up being a worthwhile trip, and I'll go back to that one again.
So that was right. So that was your first. That was your first Cali Custom Show.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
Dan had been trying to get me to go there for years, but it always conflicted with other shows I had. It was usually so close to when the Knife Makers Guild show was, and I don't want to miss that one. So, but now,
that was the first. That was the first one that we'd missed in 2 years, 3 years.
I give us a pass for missing it.
Yeah, I mean it was kind of. I don't know. It was. This
Add
year has
more
been kind of
control.
strange.
well, I had 5 shows lined up to do this year, and it started off with the Las Vegas show in January there, right after SHOT,
Yeah.
and we made that one.
Yep.
And then the world went to hell.
I
And
regret not going last second because
Yeah,
that was the
fun,
last
man.
time.
Yeah,
If I
Nick,
knew-
you didn't go to that
If
one.
I
did
knew
you?
that was the last opportunity this year. Well, I had COVID that whole month, unknowingly at the time.
I got it after probably from
I was,
maybe I don't know if I
Yeah,
did
actually,
or not.
it's the last time we were
I
all.
was in bed
at the
25 days
Vegas
in
show.
January.
holy cow.
Yeah, I had a 103 fever for about 2 weeks and then full body fatigue for another 2.
Well, yeah, we probably caught it at SHOT Show or something.
Yeah, I was like,
Maybe.
and then I felt good for like 2 days. I was like, I'm gonna fly down last second, but I was like, I haven't worked in like 4 weeks. I really need to go make some money. And I was like, if I go to Vegas, I'm just gonna spend money. I was like, it's not a good time.
Well, it was a good
think it
show.
Yeah,
it was.
That was a lot of fun.
But
But
I didn't realize at the time it would be the last
Yeah.
one, pretty much.
No.
Until TKI, and then that was pretty much it in February. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, so Brad, so you went to Cali Custom. It was outside, and from the social media enthusiasm, it looked like it was fun. It looked like it was different. I don't know. I can't. It's such a weird thing, but it sounds like it was. So was it a good show for you?
Yeah, it was a good show. I'm glad I went. It was good to get around knife people again.
Right.
It's been a long time since January, so
We're all a bunch of strangers at this point.
Yeah.
pretty much got to
It's
get
gonna be weird at Blade
reintroduced.
Show.
Yeah.
Next you're like, hey,
Who are you?
Oh,
Excuse me, who are you? Like, yeah, like, right. And I mean, I don't know. Outside's kind of nice. I love being outside. It's my next favorite thing to being inside. So I mean, yeah, I kind of dig it. It looked a little flea market-ish, but hey, whatever works. I mean, whatever allows the show to go on is kind of what counts at this point.
it was my first trip to that part of California, and it was kind of strange because I mean we're in these huge, big fancy hotels there, and half of them are closed down because I think everything in that area is there because of Disneyland, and with Disneyland being closed, I mean, we went to an Outback Steakhouse there the first night, and you walk in and there's You
Ghost
know,
town.
maybe 10 tables with people sitting there, and they tell you it's a 40-minute wait. And you go, huh?
You're like,
You
what?
know? So, well, you know, I
It's like
don't
we
want
only
to wait.
have one cook back there, and we only have one
That-
waiter.
and that's kind of what it was explained to me. They're just getting opened back up again. So, I mean, the whole area was really nice, but kind of vacant at the time. I mean, it's trying to come back.
Well, it's a slow but sure process, you know? That's
Yep.
the thing.
Yep.
Well, okay, so you did just do a new model for the Boker catalog. Tell us about that. Tell us about the development of that. Let's do a little bit of a
Actually, it was a model I carried and showed to Boker at SHOT this year, and it was, you know, I'd only made a couple of them. I made a front flipper and a regular flipper version of it, and carried them there and showed the guys at Boker at SHOT, and they liked it enough, and they kind of rushed that one. That one came out in about 6 months, which is a record, I believe. That's as quick as I've ever had one come out before. So, and we're working on some other stuff for them too. I've got some other things in irons in the fire right now, doing some more designs. And
You did do like one or two with Wii, right? I know you did one that came out not too long ago.
yeah, and we've got a couple more coming out. There's a shorter version of the Miscreant coming out, a 3-inch bladed version, and also got one of the Civivi line that they picked up a small little liner lock I had on my table at the Las Vegas show, and said they wanted to do that one. So I've already got the prototypes on that. I'm just waiting on them to tell me when they're going to release them. So I mean, their prototypes turned out really nice.
That'll no doubt be a winner right there.
Yeah,
that
So I don't-
Civivi line, man. That's coming in hard. Like
it is.
It's really at the price point and the quality.
Probably just waiting on that Walmart contract, to be honest, about now.
Man, it's a tough one.
Anytime now.
Anytime.
I don't know. It's out of my hands.
That's pretty great. So Civivi, and what was the name of the Civivi one?
I call it a Bo model because it's named after a friend of mine, Bo Lofton, because I made the very first one for him, and I just named it that. And when we reached out to me a few weeks ago, said we're ready to start advertising this thing. What are we going to call this model? And I told them that's what I called it. And if they wanted to come up with a better name, I don't have anything against that. But they came back to me the next day. Oh no, we're going to call it the Bow. So okay, that's good.
There we go. Nice.
I always love
I mean,
that.
naming knives is not my strong point. I admire everybody that comes up with all these names, but I just
That's always an exciting time when they're like, "What? We're ready. Like, what do we call this?" Like, and then you're like, "Oh, it's
Elijah's
about to."
favorite part.
Well, I already know usually, but it's just that things are about to get
So
released when you're asked like, "Oh, what's this going to be called?"
Do you have a name as you're designing them, Elijah, or
Sometimes I'll have the name first, and then I'll design the knife around it. And sometimes I'll have to think about it for like years. And it's always different. But yeah.
Well, I just had something happen this last week. I made a new 2-bladed knife. I haven't done any 2-bladed ones in quite a while, and this one's an opposite end. I call it an OET, opposite end trapper, with a regular clip point on one end and the long spay blade on the other. And the way the shape came out on the spay blade, when I saw it, I saw a friend of mine that died a couple of years ago, a knife maker named John Bartlow from out west, and he made all these skinning knives, and I saw that blade and I said that's something John Bartlow would make, so that's going to be my Bartlow Skinner. So I'm already cutting out a couple of those now.
Yeah, that's cool. So sometimes you have to pay your homage to something or someone. Names are weird. It's like it kind of defines the knife to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
An homage name is definitely it's heavy set, and it can mean a lot, and also give the knife a particular feel, for sure. I mean, I don't, Elijah, a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it can change in a couple years too. I don't know.
Well, you can't change the name of the knife after it's come out.
Well, no, the design will, it has to like mature and like gestate for a while before I name it, and then
Or flow into something else and give it a different name.
Yeah, you never know. Sometimes naming is the hardest part of the whole process.
Fair enough. All right. So, Brad, we've got new Bokers, we've got Wheeze, and we've got new Civivis. So you're actually kind of killing it this year, it sounds like. It sounds like you're rolling in pretty hard.
There's no complaints from this end, no.
Nice. Okay. I'm digging it, man. I'm really digging it. And now you're full time. So you're making customs. You're making two-bladed trappers. That's pretty neat. We don't see a whole lot of two-bladed modern, and I'm gonna say tactical folders these days at all. Not that I can think of anyway. So that's pretty awesome. No, I can't think of any. So I gotta say I'm looking forward to that one for sure. I think that's gonna be pretty cool.
They're works in progress. I mean, I gotta refine them some, but it's kind of like making two knives in one. So I don't know. I like making single bladed ones still. That's my bread and butter right there. So
I'll have to yell at Les this week and try to get him to get over to that shop and put some springs in your knives.
Unfortunately, we're farther apart now than we were when we both lived in South Florida. He moved to the West Coast, and I moved up here, and everything. I mean, I wish we were closer, because I'd love to get together with him, and because he does some cool stuff in his shop.
Yeah. Florida knife makers, man. I'm loving it. Very cool. So Brad, where's the best place to keep track of you? What kind of social media you're doing? What kind of, if people want to watch your work or what's coming out, what's the best way to do that?
Instagram, Brad Zinker Knives on Instagram is probably the best, and I've been neglecting it lately. My daughter was running that for me, but she's got a full-time job now, and so I need to get more active into that, where they can email me at bzinker@gmail.com.
Nice. Very cool, man. I'm loving it. Well, I'm looking forward to the new releases. I'm looking forward to our 2021 show schedule, which is yet to be seen, but I'm hoping that it's going to be positive, and we can all meet up at the next show and break some bread together. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
It will be, as long as we can recognize each other wearing masks.
Oh man, I'm telling you. Half of us are gonna have a lot longer beards by then. That's gonna be a whole new thing, man. I'm sure we'll be able to point each other out in a crowd for sure. I want to absolutely thank you so much tonight for taking some time and coming on with us and talking knives, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I'm gonna take charge and start signing off. This is Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas. I want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of the Bladeology podcast.
And this is Nick Chuperin of NCC Knives, signing off.
Elijah Isham of Isham Blade Works. Good night, everybody.
Brad Zinker, thanks for having me.